My name is Alexis Lexi Monroe. I'm 25, I sling coffee at the Route 66 diner in Flagstaff, and I paid off my Ford Focus with tips and tired feet. If you've ever been the reliable one in your family, I'm talking to you. Before we get swallowed by what happens next, please like, subscribe, and share. Not for me, but for the next person who needs permission to choose themselves. We were on I-10, just north of Tucson, late afternoon. The sun didn't shine. It interrogated. Sam, my 23-year-old sister, had her feet tucked up, glossy nails drumming the door panel while the AC wheezed out warm breath. "Do you hear that?" she asked, tilting her ear toward the front left tire. "Like, thup-thup? Could be a belt. Maybe pull over?" "I rotated them in April," I said, staying steady on the lane lines. "Probably the road." "Please?" She said it lightly, that practiced softness she'd used on teachers and boyfriends, and too often on me. I signaled and eased onto the shoulder. The Focus sighed into silence. Heat slapped the moment I cracked the door. Dry, metallic, the smell of baked rubber and dust. Cicadas buzzed like a live wire. I crouched by the tire, pressing a thumb to the tread. Good depth, no bulges, no nail. "Looks fine," I called, because I always check twice. I rounded the hood to look at the right side anyway and scraped a knuckle under the fender. The engine revved. I shot upright so fast the world tilted. Sam's hands sat at 10 and 2. Her jaw was set. For half a second our eyes met through the windshield. I watched a decision harden. "Sam?" I took one step. "What are you—" The Focus lurched, gravel spitting. She merged back into traffic like this was a normal lane change and not a sister cutting a life in half. "Sam!" The shout tore my throat. I lunged as a semi exploded past, horn punching the air. I staggered back behind the white line, and my taillights shrank to pinpricks, then to shimmer, then to nothing. Silence didn't fall. It spread. The desert hummed, unchanged. The sky stayed blister blue. My body felt newly spare, like the part of me that expected rescue had been peeled away. "She'll circle back," I told myself. "She does grand gestures, then grander fixes." I stood, waiting for her to swing around and roll her eyes and say I was being dramatic. She didn't. I pulled my phone. One skittish bar. Emergency call. 2 rings. Then call failed. Tried again. Failed. Again. Failed. The sun turned the screen into a mirror. I cupped it with both hands like prayer and watched the signal blink out. "Okay," I said to the guardrail, to the scrub, to anyone. "Okay, Lexi, think." The shoulder dropped to mesquite and creosote, thorny plants that survive by asking for nothing. Somewhere to my right, a rattle whispered from the brush. Dry, precise. My body froze before my mind caught up. The sound faded. I exhaled slow. My water bottle sat in the Focus's passenger footwell, mocking me from miles away already. I slid into the anemic shade of the guardrail. It felt like hiding behind a strip of paper. Heat pressed in, sweat cooled too fast and made me shiver. A dusty blue Tacoma eased onto the shoulder 20 yards back and idled. The passenger window rolled down. "You all right, miss?" the driver called, cap pulled low, voice cautious and kind. "My phone keeps dropping," I said. My mouth was cotton. My instincts flipped between take the help and keep control. "Could you call 911, please?" "Sure can." He lifted his phone to the visor, found 2 bars. "Name?" "Alexis. Lexi Monroe." Saying my full name anchored me to the asphalt. He relayed the mile marker, repeated it slow. "They're sending someone," he said. "If you want, I can keep the AC on." "Would you mind waiting there?" I gestured to the spot ahead. He nodded, pulled forward, and idled where I could see him, a small, steady engine in a world of glare. My phone buzzed. "Mom, Sam says you bailed. Where are you? We're worried." "Bailed." A sound escaped me, half laugh, half grit. I put the phone face down on the rail so I wouldn't throw it into the scrub. The wind shifted. It came hotter from the west, smelling like pennies and rain that never lands. A vulture traced a patient circle overhead. The Tacoma idled another minute, then, quietly, pulled away. No wave, no dust trail. Just gone. Maybe the dispatcher reassured him. Maybe he had somewhere to be. Maybe a stranger's firm boundaries read like ingratitude. The sun slid, and the heat loosened its grip. The desert did what deserts do, traded one kind of punishment for another. Sweat chilled my shirt flat. The air found new teeth. A coyote yipped somewhere behind the scrub. It was answered farther off. I pressed my phone's power button long enough to read 1%, then shut it off. You don't burn your last match just to admire the flame. I kept still until stillness started to feel like quitting. I stood, legs shaky, and scanned the darkening road. Headlights appeared far off, tiny points that could be salvation. I lifted an arm, palm open. The car blew by without slowing, a slap of grit and wind that made my eyes water. I didn't cry. I didn't have the water to spare. I bit the inside of my cheek until the pain came clean and simple, and said, out loud, "You're not a ghost, Lexi. You're here." The anger arrived not as fire, but as clarity. This wasn't a lesson my parents would later narrate as tough love. It was calculated. Sam knew I'd pull over. She counted on the piece of me that fixes and smooths. She weaponized it. Another truck roared past. I stayed behind the line. Small victories. I still had judgment, even if I'd just lost most of my faith. Minutes stretched thin. The sky bruised purple. Stars punched through. The shoulder was a narrow ribbon of pale concrete, then a drop into scrub. I thought of Flagstaff, of Martha leaning on the counter saying, "You can do hard things," of Lisa rolling napkins and laughing about being my designated sister, even though we didn't share blood. The memories didn't make me safer. They made me stubborn. A faint whine floated from the south. Siren? Heat can fake anything. I listened. It wavered, then grew. Red and white splinters ghosted a far curve, smudged by distance. "Over here," I whispered to no one yet, to whatever version of help existed. My voice came out rough but steady. "I'm here." I squared my shoulders and took a breath that filled everything the heat hadn't hollowed out. The desert's night wind combed the creosote leaves. The guardrail cooled under my palms. Somewhere in the distance, a sound kept climbing. A promise, or a trick I couldn't afford to believe in fully. If it was real, I would meet it standing. If it wasn't, I would meet the night the same way. That's how abandonment felt. Not loud, not cinematic. Just a wide road that didn't care if you made it across, and a family story that snapped shut behind you like a door with the lock on the outside. The siren steadied. Lights thickened over the rise. I pressed my heels into the concrete to ground myself. This was the edge of before and after, before I called what they did by its real name, after I learned how to stand still and let help find me without apologizing for needing it. "Here," I said again, louder this time as the first flash painted the guardrail white. "I'm here." Next, the sun flips to cold. The stars watch without blinking. And I find out exactly how long 10 minutes can be when the desert decides to test your definition of family. The sirens that I thought were coming never arrived. Their echo slipped away like water through my fingers, leaving me with nothing but the steady hum of cicadas and the hollow beat of my own pulse. By the time I realized the blue Tacoma had disappeared, I was already alone again, stranded on the side of I-10 with only the sky pressing down. The sun was dropping fast, the air cooling quicker than I expected. Arizona doesn't ease you into night, it slams the door. Sweat that had soaked my shirt now chilled my skin, clinging like ice. I hugged my arms around myself, whispering just to hear something human. "All right, Lexi, you're still here. You're not going to quit." I powered my phone on for one last check, 1%, then shut it off again. I couldn't waste that final flicker. Somewhere in the dark, a coyote howled. The answer came farther off, two voices crossing the desert like a secret conversation. My stomach knotted. I crouched near the guardrail, knees pressed into gravel, and tried to steady my breathing. My mind kept replaying Sam's face behind the wheel, the moment her eyes locked on mine. That wasn't panic. That wasn't a mistake. She meant it. The chill bit harder, so I stood. If I sat still, I'd freeze before morning. I pushed forward, west along the shoulder, my shoes scraping grit. I kept my eyes on the faint glow of a mile marker, a small square of silver reflecting starlight. It felt close. 10 steps in, my knees buckled. I caught myself against the rail, palms burning. I wanted to lie down right there, but I forced my body back upright. "One more," I muttered. Left foot, right foot. The desert didn't care, but saying it out loud made me reel. As the sky darkened, stars spilled across it, sharp and endless. They should have been beautiful. Instead, they looked like witnesses, indifferent as Sam's retreating taillights. I tried to drink in the sight, to pull some hope out of it, but the dizziness made the sky tilt. I stumbled over a rock and fell hard. Gravel tore my palms open. When I pushed myself up, I heard it, a dry rattle close by, so close I could feel the vibration in my bones. My breath locked. A pale coil slid through the sand, tail buzzing like a warning bell. The rattlesnake lifted its head, tongue flicking the air between us. I froze, hands hovering midair, not daring to move. My heart hammered so violently I thought it might draw the thing closer. Finally, after a long minute, the snake slipped into the scrub and vanished. I sagged back on my heels, tears springing without permission. I wasn't crying out of fear alone. It was rage, too. Rage at Sam, at my parents, at years of being the dependable one who never mattered enough, all of it boiling up under a desert sky. "I gave you everything," I whispered into the night. "And you left me here." The words shook, but they steadied me too. I pressed a bloody palm against my jeans and made myself stand again. The silver gleam of the mile marker pulled me forward. When I reached it, I wanted to scream. Mile 231. No exit, no lights, just a number nailed into steel. I laughed instead, a raw, cracked sound. Then came headlights, a semi barreling fast. Desperation clawed through me. I stumbled into the lane, arms waving. "Please, please stop!" The horn exploded, deafening. The truck swerved, wind and grit blasting me sideways. I landed on my knees, chest heaving, ears ringing. My whole body shook, not just from cold, but from how close I had come to being erased. I crawled back to the shoulder, gasping. "I'm not invisible," I rasped. "I'm not." Every breath tasted of blood and dust, but the fury burned hotter than fear. If Sam thought this would break me, she was wrong. The night stretched on. I walked, staggered, sometimes crawled, driven only by stubbornness. My throat ached with thirst, tongue swollen, my legs screamed. I thought about Lisa back at the diner, about her telling me I deserved better. I clung to that like a lifeline. At some point, the horizon began to lighten, a thin stripe of orange bleeding into black. Morning. I had survived the night. Barely, but still. Relief didn't last. The sun climbed, and with it came the heat. The cold traded places with fire, just as merciless. Sweat rolled down my temples. The cuts on my knees stung. My lips cracked open. By midday, the desert was shimmering. Ahead, a pool of water wavered in the distance. Hope surged, wild and foolish. I staggered toward it, arms outstretched. The closer I got, the more it broke apart. Nothing but heat dancing on asphalt. A mirage. My knees gave out. I hit the ground and stayed there, chest heaving. My vision swam. Memories tried to drag me under. Late nights at the diner, dropping bills into envelopes marked family emergency, while Sam posted photos from spring break. My parents' voices. "She needs it more than you do." Always Sam, never me. "Get up," I whispered to myself. The sound was barely audible. "Lexi, get up." I pressed my hands into the road and forced my body up. I wobbled, staggered, then found one step, then another. I had to keep moving. That's when I heard it, the low rumble of an engine, softer than a semi, steadier than a mirage. I turned, squinting into the shimmer. A white pickup approached, slower than most. Fear and relief crashed together. I raised an arm high, palm open, not reckless this time, just visible, pleading. The truck slowed. Brakes hissed. Dust curled around its tires as it rolled to a stop. The driver's door opened, and a middle-aged man stepped out, careful, cautious. "You all right, miss?" The sight of a bottle of water in his hand nearly undid me. My knees buckled, and I barely caught myself. Please, I croaked. Water. He hurried forward, pressed the bottle into my hands. The condensation was a miracle against my skin. I twisted the cap and drank too fast, coughing, then drinking again. Life poured back in, one swallow at a time. Do you want me to call it in? He asked gently. Get you some real help? I clutched the bottle like treasure and nodded, voice breaking. My sister left me. Please, just tell them that. He frowned, concern deepening, but nodded. We'll get you taken care of. Hang on. As he lifted his phone, my body sagged with relief. For the first time since Sam drove away, I believed I might survive this. The bottle of water was still cold in my hand when the paramedics loaded me into the ambulance. I clutched it like proof I hadn't dreamed the rescue. My body shook from exhaustion, but my mind was sharper than it had been in hours. The desert hadn't taken me. By the time we pulled up to Banner University Medical Center, Tucson, the night air had gone mild, the kind of air I used to call perfect. Now it felt unreal, too soft compared to the furnace I'd just walked out of. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed. A nurse clipped a monitor to my finger and wrapped a cuff around my arm. I winced at the squeeze, then at the sting of antiseptic on my scraped palms. Mild dehydration, she said gently. No fractures. You're lucky. Lucky. The words stung. I lay on the narrow bed, the blanket scratchy, staring at the ceiling tiles until the door creaked open. A man in uniform stepped inside. Officer Daniel Hayes, Tucson PD, square shoulders, sun-lined face, voice carrying quiet authority. Miss Monroe? He pulled up a chair. I need to ask you some questions about what happened out there. I nodded, throat still raw. My sister... She drove off, left me on the highway. On purpose? His eyes were steady, not skeptical, just careful. Yes. I forced myself not to look away. She pretended there was something wrong with the car. As soon as I got out, she took it. He scribbled on a pad, then glanced at me. We ran the plates. The Focus is registered in your name? It's mine. I worked for it. My voice cracked, the words heavier than they should have been. He nodded once, then tapped on the tablet clipped to his belt. That helps, but there's more. Your sister? Samantha Monroe? She's had 3 prior citations for reckless driving. All fines, all paid off. The words landed like a punch. Paid off? By who? He turned the screen toward me. The records glowed cold. Violation, reckless driving. Status, paid. Beside each, the notation, PAD. PAD? I asked, though part of me already knew. Paid by parents, Hayes said. Common notation. I let out a sound that was part laugh, part gasp. My parents never told me. 3 times she risked lives, and they covered it up. 3 times they had money for her mistakes, while I clocked double shifts to buy secondhand textbooks. They protected her, I whispered. They always protect her. Hayes studied me a moment, then spoke low. Family can keep secrets, especially when money's involved. My phone buzzed from the tray beside me, screen lighting up with missed calls. Mom, Dad, Sam. My stomach clenched. Then another notification slid down, a text from Mom. I almost didn't read it, but my thumb betrayed me. She's stubborn about the car. We have to teach her a lesson. I scrolled, heart thudding. More messages unfurled like a rope tightening around me. Dad, don't do anything drastic. Mom, just make sure the car stays in the family. If she can't sell it, she can't leave. Sam, I'll handle it. She'll realize she needs us. The phone trembled in my grip. I shoved it toward Hayes, my hands shaking. They planned it. This wasn't just Sam, they all knew. His jaw tightened as he read. This changes things. Abandonment, conspiracy, unauthorized use of a vehicle. That's criminal, Miss Monroe. I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes, fighting the rush of betrayal so sharp it left me breathless. Every memory of handing over money, every canceled plan, every family-first lecture collapsed into this one moment. They hadn't just neglected me. They'd plotted. When I lowered my hands, Hayes's voice softened. Do you have documentation? Bank statements, receipts, anything showing a pattern of financial pressure? Yes. My throat felt scraped raw. I saved everything. Every transfer, every loan I covered. I didn't know why, but now… That was smart. He leaned back. Documentation matters. Judges don't ignore paper. The word judges pulled me into a future I hadn't dared imagine. Courtrooms, evidence, my family on the other side. Terrifying, but maybe finally fair. The door opened again and a nurse stepped in with fresh bandages. Hayes stood. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll talk next steps. But listen to me, Lexi. You don't have to go back there tonight. I wanted to argue, to say I could handle it, but my body betrayed the truth. I was trembling, fragile, not because of dehydration anymore, but because the foundation of my whole life had cracked. I nodded, voice steady despite the storm in my chest. I'm not going back. Hayes gave a short nod, almost approval. Good. We'll get you safe. When the door closed, I lay back against the stiff pillow. My parents' words echoed in my head. Family comes first. Tonight, in this bright, sterile room, I understood. They were right. Family does come first. But from now on, I would decide what family meant. The hospital room quieted after Officer Hayes left. The monitor beeped steady at my side, but my mind refused to match its rhythm. The group chat messages still glowed in memory. Teach her a lesson. Make sure the car stays in the family. I closed my eyes, and suddenly the sterile smell of antiseptic gave way to the remembered scent of lemon polish from my childhood kitchen. I was 9 the summer Sam went to camp. She bounced down the driveway with a new suitcase, Mom filming her on the camcorder. I had stayed behind, a rag in my hand, wiping down the counters because someone has to help your father while your sister's away. That night, I watched the video replay on our living room TV. Sam laughed, hair shiny from a salon trim. I touched my own uneven bangs, cut by Mom with kitchen scissors. Dad's voice on the tape, our star girl. My name never mentioned. Another memory shoved in, high school sophomore year. Sam twirled in front of a mirror in a brand new prom dress, pale blue, sequins catching the light. Mom pinned the hem while Dad snapped pictures. I stood in the doorway, holding my thrift store dress in a garment bag. It smelled faintly of mothballs, the zipper snagging when I tried to show them. Isn't it gorgeous? Mom beamed at Sam. I forced a smile. Mine only cost $20. Dad didn't even glance over. You'll still have fun, Lexi. It's just prom. That night, when I got home, Sam's shoes were kicked across the hallway, glitter still stuck to the carpet. College years hurt sharper. I found the tuition bills once, Sam's classes at the University of Arizona, thousands paid by checks signed in Dad's square handwriting. At the time, I was serving tables at the diner, saving crumpled tips for community college credits, telling myself it was normal. Family sacrifices, right? But one night I came home exhausted, hands sore from bussing tables, and heard them laughing in the living room. Sam had just returned from another shopping trip. She held up a new phone. Mom says it's family money, she chirped. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and dropped another night class, because I couldn't afford the book list. The memories bled together like cuts that never fully closed. The birthday dinners where Sam's cake came from the best bakery in town, and mine came from a discount box mix. The Christmas mornings when she got the newest iPod, and I got socks. The summer evenings when I begged to join art camp, only to be told, Lexi, you're practical, that's more for Sam. Even the little things carried weight. The way Mom's face softened at Sam's tears, but hardened at mine. The way Dad called me Steady Lexi, like it was praise, while bragging about Sam's spark to anyone who listened. I opened my eyes back in the hospital, the ceiling tiles coming into focus. My chest rose and fell unevenly. All those years I thought being overlooked was just how families worked. Maybe I wasn't special, maybe I didn't deserve the extras. But now, after the desert, after the chat messages, I understood. It wasn't oversight, it was a system. A system where Sam was always the investment, and I was always the insurance. The truth hit harder than the sun ever had. They didn't just favor her. They relied on me to stay quiet, to bend, to fund her mistakes with my labor. And when I tried to claim one thing as mine, the car, they decided I was disposable. My hand curled into the hospital blanket, knuckles white. For the first time in 25 years, I felt the split clean and sharp, them on one side, me on the other. And I knew, no matter what they said, no matter how many apologies they rehearsed, I couldn't cross back. The hospital discharged me 2 days later with fresh bandages, a prescription for electrolytes, and more questions than answers. I hadn't called my parents. I hadn't answered Sam. I drove straight back to Flagstaff in my dusty Ford Focus, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to this world. By Monday, I was back at the Route 66 diner. My arms ached from carrying trays, but the rhythm of work steadied me. Plates clattered, coffee poured, orders shouted over the fryers. Normalcy. Almost. Lisa slid onto the stool at the prep counter during my break. She'd been my friend since high school, another lifer at the diner. Her eyeliner was smudged, aprons spattered with syrup. "You look like hell, Monroe," she said, not unkindly. "Thanks," I muttered, sipping from my styrofoam cup. She leaned in, voice low. "Word is your sister ditched you down south. That true?" I froze, coffee halfway to my lips. "Who told you?" "Truckers talk. One of them saw you on the shoulder near Tucson, said you looked half dead." She raised her eyebrows. "You gonna keep pretending everything's fine?" The weight of the secret pressed on me. I had carried shame my whole life, being the less favored daughter, the reliable one, but this wasn't shame. This was betrayal. I set my cup down with more force than I meant. "She left me on purpose. My parents knew. They wanted to scare me into keeping the car in the family." Lisa's mouth dropped open. "That's not just toxic, Lexi. That's criminal!" Before I could answer, Martha, the diner's owner, walked by with her ledger. She was in her 60s, hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, and had been a second mother to half the staff over the years. She paused, studying my face. "Something wrong?" Lisa gave me a look. "Tell her." I swallowed hard. "They tried to strand me, Martha. My own family. Officer Hayes said it's abandonment, maybe worse." Martha's eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "You don't have to go through this alone. You've got us. And you've got options." Her words cracked something open in me. I had always believed options belonged to Sam. Schools, cars, forgiveness. But maybe I had them too. That night, Martha sat with me in her office, a cramped space with ledgers piled high. She pulled a sticky note from her desk. "You know Judge Rodriguez, right? Comes in every Thursday for meatloaf?" I nodded. The older man who always tipped generously, who carried himself with quiet authority. "He volunteers free consultations for folks in trouble. I'll call him. You bring those records you've been saving, the transfers, the receipts." I blinked. "You believe me?" "Lexi." Martha looked me square in the eye. "I watched you put your sister through nursing school with those envelopes you left in your parents' mailbox. Don't ask me how I know. I notice things." Tears burned my throat. I had always felt invisible at home. Here, in a greasy diner office, someone had seen me all along. The next morning, I walked in with a manila folder so thick the clasp barely shut. Lisa whistled when she saw it. "Damn, girl. You building a case or writing a memoir?" "Maybe both," I said, sliding into the booth where Judge Rodriguez waited with a steaming mug. He adjusted his glasses, flipping through receipts, bank transfers, text screenshots. With each page, his brows drew lower. Finally, he set the folder down. "You've documented years of financial exploitation. And now, physical endangerment. This isn't just family drama, Miss Monroe. This is legal." The words shivered through me. Legal. The one realm where Mom's tears and Dad's lectures couldn't rewrite the narrative. Lisa leaned over the booth. "So what's next? Restraining order? Press charges?" Judge Rodriguez folded his hands. "Both are possible. But first, Lexi has to decide. Are you ready to stop carrying their weight?" The diner buzzed around us, forks clinking, bell over the door jingling. My old life and my new one collided in that booth. For once, I didn't feel small. I straightened, sliding the folder back to my side. "Yes, I'm ready," Lisa grinned. Martha, standing behind the counter, gave me a single nod. Allies, real ones. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. And deep down, I knew, if my family wanted to make this a war, I finally had an army. The diner was full that Tuesday afternoon, every booth packed with regulars escaping the summer heat. The smell of coffee and fried onions hung thick, the kind of ordinary comfort I usually counted on. But the moment the bell over the door jingled, comfort died. My father stepped in first, sharp in a pressed button-down, tie knotted like he was heading into court instead of a diner. His eyes scanned the room, taking measure of the audience as much as me. Behind him, my mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue already damp. And then came Sam. Sundress, hair curled, eyes rimmed red in that fragile way she'd perfected since childhood. The room shifted. Forks paused midair. Conversations thinned into silence. They hadn't just come to talk to me, they'd come to perform. "Lexi," Dad's voice carried across the room, calm but heavy with authority. "Your mother hasn't slept since you left. We need to talk, in private." My stomach clenched, but my feet stayed planted behind the counter. I caught Martha's gaze. She stood by the register, arms crossed, chin tilted in solidarity. A quiet permission. "You choose." "I'm working," I said, wiping the counter with deliberate slowness. "My shift ends at 4. A murmur rippled through the booths. Dad's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. He wasn't used to me drawing lines in public. "This isn't like you, Alexis," he said, his voice carrying that subtle edge meant to remind me of my place. "We raised you better than this." I set the rag down, turned to face him squarely. "Better than what exactly?" The question hung heavy, sharper than I intended. His lips pressed thin. Mom sniffled louder, clutching her tissue. Sam took her cue, stepping forward, tears spilling perfectly on time. "Lexi, please," she whispered. "I know what I did was wrong. I panicked. I didn't think. I was stupid, okay? But I need you. We need you." Her voice cracked. Gasps fluttered from table 3. Mrs. Abernathy pressed her hand to her chest like she was watching a play. I looked straight at Sam. "You left me to die in the desert." Her chin trembled. "I thought you'd be fine. You're always fine. She broke off, shoulders trembling with rehearsed sobs. The sympathy in the room tilted toward her. I could feel it. The script was ancient. Sam, the fragile golden child. Me, the cold, unyielding one. But not this time. I reached under the counter and pulled out the folder Judge Rodriguez had urged me to carry. Its weight steadied me. I opened it and laid down a printed screenshot on the counter, sliding it toward the edge where everyone could see. "Recognize this, Sam?" My voice shook, but not with fear, with fury. She blinked, mascara smudging, and glanced down. The text thread glared back, words in black and white. "She's stubborn about the car. We need to teach her a lesson." The diner fell utterly silent. The hum of the soda machine was suddenly deafening. Sam's eyes widened. She stammered, "That's out of context." "Context?" My laugh was sharp, bitter. "The context is you conspired with Mom and Dad to strand me on a desert highway. That's not panic. That's premeditated." Dad's face flushed red. He stepped forward. "Put that away. Family matters don't belong here." "Family matters," I repeated louder. "That's all I've ever heard. Family first. Family sacrifices. Except it was always my sacrifices, wasn't it?" I pulled more pages from the folder. Receipts, bank transfers, checks signed in Dad's hand for Sam's fines. 3 reckless driving charges paid off by you. Thousands for Sam's tuition, phones, vacations. While I worked double shifts to cover my own classes, my rent, my life. Mrs. Caldwell gasped. Mr. Henderson leaned forward in his booth. Whispers swept through the diner like wildfire. Mom clutched her cardigan tighter, her face paling. "Lexi, please, you're humiliating us." "No," I said, steady now, voice rising. "You did that yourselves. You taught me that family means loyalty until it kills you. but let me tell you something." I looked at the room, at the eyes glued to us, at Sam's trembling form. I drew a breath. The saying isn't, "blood is thicker than water." The real proverb is, "the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." It means chosen bonds can be stronger than forced ones. And I choose differently now. The words landed like a hammer. Sam's tears dried fast, her expression curdling into anger. "You're twisting everything. You're making me the villain." "You did that yourself," I said quietly. Dad's fists clenched at his sides, knuckles white. "This is not over." Behind me, Martha's voice cut through, firm as steel. "It is for today. Lexi has customers waiting. You've made your point. Now leave." The authority in her tone stunned even me. Dad glared, but the room had shifted. The community was no longer buying their script. My parents stood frozen, Sam trembling between them, mascara streaking down her cheeks. The performance had failed. For once, the audience wasn't applauding. I gathered the papers back into the folder, sliding them close. My hands shook, but my spine was straight. "I'm done being silent." The doorbell jingled again, the sound strangely final as they stepped out into the Arizona sun, their perfect facade cracked wide. The diner buzz returned slowly, cautious at first, then louder. Mrs. Abernathy leaned toward Mrs. Caldwell. "Did you see those texts?" Lisa appeared at my side, eyes blazing with pride. "You just tore down the whole house of cards, Monroe." I let out a shaky breath and gripped the counter, the weight of the moment crashing over me. For the first time, I wasn't the invisible one. For the first time, I had spoken and been heard, and there was no going back. The echoes of the diner confrontation still clung to me as I drove to my parents' house the following Thursday evening. My Ford Focus hummed steady on the cracked neighborhood asphalt, headlights brushing the stucco houses and manicured lawns of the subdivision I'd once called home. Mom's letter had begged me to come. "Your father's health is fragile. We just want one last dinner as a family." A manipulation, I knew. I had even called Dr. Winters myself. Dad hadn't seen him in months, heart perfectly fine. But I was done letting their script define me. Tonight, I was writing my own ending. When I pulled up, the house looked smaller than I remembered, though every light blazed as if to chase away suspicion. Jackie's car idled discreetly down the block, her presence a silent promise. If things went wrong, I wouldn't face it alone. Mom opened the door before I knocked. She wore her church cardigan, yellow and soft, the one she always saved for family photos. Her arms stretched out, but I sidestepped her embrace, brushing past into the house that had raised me and broken me. The dining room table had been dressed for war disguised as hospitality. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, my childhood favorites, all steaming in porcelain bowls. But at the center sat a prescription bottle, label turned outward, as if daring me to question Dad's condition. Dad occupied the head of the table, posture stiff, expression grave. Sam sat at his right, hands folded in her lap, eyes already glassy with practiced tears. Mom slid into her chair, leaving mine open, the ghost of expectation pressing at me. "Sit, Lexi," Dad commanded gently, the way a judge might address a witness. "Family dinner isn't complete without everyone present." I remained standing. "Before I sit, I have things to say." Sam's lips parted, ready with her apology script, but I held up a hand. "Not yet." I placed the manila folder on the table and flipped it open. Its weight shifted the air in the room. Dad's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" "Documentation," I said. "Evidence. Years of it." I laid out the first sheet, a childhood calendar marked with Sam's soccer tournaments and theater rehearsals. Every box for her was filled in neat pen. Mine, blank, except for chores scribbled in Mom's handwriting. Clean bathroom, babysit, mow lawn. Sam flushed. "That's just how families divide things." "No," I cut her off. "That's how this family divided things. You got investment. I got labor." The next sheet, bank statements highlighting thousands withdrawn for Sam's tuition. "You paid her way through the University of Arizona. I had to sling burgers to afford community college night classes." Dad's jaw clenched. "We did what was necessary." "For who?" I snapped. "For her? Always for her." I slid forward the reckless driving citations Officer Hayes had shown me. 3 times she endangered lives. 3 times you covered the fines. You kept me in the dark while I was bailing her out of phone bills and vacations. Sam's practiced tears started to fall. "I didn't ask." "You didn't have to," I said, voice cold. "They trained me to hand over whatever you wanted. And when I finally said no, when I chose one thing for myself, you tried to strand me in the desert." Mom gasped, clutching her chest. "That's a horrible way to describe it. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding." "No." I pulled out my phone, screen bright with the damning group chat. I scrolled and read aloud, my voice steady. "She's stubborn about the car. We need to teach her a lesson. Don't do anything drastic. Just make sure the car stays in the family. I'll handle it. She'll realize she needs us." The words fell heavy into the silence. "You plotted," I whispered. "You didn't just abandon me, you planned it." Dad stood, palms flat on the table, trying to reclaim control. "You're twisting everything. We acted out of love." "Love?" My laugh was raw, sharp. "Love doesn't leave someone to die in the desert. Love doesn't call their hard work family property. Love doesn't silence them for 25 years. I took a deep breath. "You always threw around that phrase, 'blood is thicker than water.' But you've been quoting it wrong. The full saying is, 'The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb.' It means the bonds you choose can be stronger than the ones you're born into." Sam flinched as though struck. Mom covered her mouth. Dad's face went crimson. I leaned forward. "I'm choosing differently. Tonight, this is my covenant. With truth, with boundaries, with people who actually see me. That's stronger than whatever this has been." The air trembled with rage and panic. Sam shot to her feet, tears gone, voice sharp. "You're humiliating us. You're making us look like monsters." "You did that yourselves," I said, sliding the folder shut. Mom reached across the table, fingers trembling. "Lexi, please, if we just talk." I pulled my hand back before she could touch me. "I'm done being manipulated by crocodile tears." Dad's voice dropped, cold steel now. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. You'll regret it." I held his gaze, unflinching. "You already taught me what regret feels like. I carried it every time I gave up a class, every time I canceled plans, every time I bailed Sam out while you called it family duty. Tonight, regret belongs to you." I reached into my pocket and set my house key on the table. The small brass key gleamed under the chandelier. "I release myself from this. From all of you." Sam's voice cracked, suddenly desperate. "Lexi, I'm sorry." I shook my head. "Save it. I don't need your apology. I need distance." For a long beat, no one moved. The smell of fried chicken and mashed potatoes clung to the silence like an accusation. Finally, I straightened, lifted the folder, and turned toward the door. My footsteps echoed down the hall that had once been mine, past the family photos where Sam always smiled brightest, and I stood half in shadow. At the threshold, I looked back one last time. Mom was sobbing into her tissue. Sam sat rigid, mascara streaked, her face a mask of anger and fear. Dad still stood at the head of the table, powerless for once, hands gripping the wood like it was the only thing holding him steady. "Goodbye," I said simply. Then I walked out, closing the door behind me with quiet finality. Outside, the night air rushed into my lungs, sharp and clean. Jackie's headlights blinked from down the street, a beacon waiting to carry me forward, and for the first time, the weight of my family didn't drag me down. It rolled off my shoulders, leaving space for something else, something that felt almost like freedom. The night air still clung to me as Jackie's car carried me away from the Monroe house, headlights slicing the dark. My hands were trembling, not from fear anymore, but from release. The trial at the dinner table was over. I had set down my key and walked out, but the real trial was only beginning. By the weekend, whispers had become shouts. At the diner, I could feel them ripple through the booths like currents. people didn't just watch me anymore. They leaned in, waiting for updates, trading scraps of information like currency. "Did you hear?" Mrs. Caldwell murmured too loudly at her booth. "The Monroe girl left her sister in the desert. On purpose." "Not just her," Mr. Henderson countered. "The parents knew. My cousin works dispatch. He saw the police report." Their words weren't daggers this time. They were shields, cast into the air on my behalf. Lisa nudged me behind the counter. "Looks like the town finally picked a side, and spoiler alert, it's not theirs." I wanted to laugh, but my throat tightened instead. For so long, I'd been invisible. Now everyone saw me. On Monday morning, Officer Hayes walked into the diner. His uniform carried weight, but his tone was gentle when he leaned on the counter. "Lexi, Judge Rodriguez filed the petition. We've got enough to move forward with charges: abandonment, reckless endangerment, and financial exploitation. It won't be easy, but it's solid." My knees nearly buckled. "So it's real? They'll actually face consequences?" He nodded. "No one's above the law, not even family." Martha slid a mug of coffee his way, her eyes meeting mine over the steam. "Told you documentation matters," she said, her voice gruff but warm. The fallout spread faster than I could have imagined. At church, the whispers turned sharp. Mrs. Abernathy later told me she'd stood up during Bible study and said aloud, "Family doesn't mean covering sin with silence." My mother had left in tears. The local paper ran a column under Community Voices, deserted when loyalty turns dangerous. Though my name wasn't printed, everyone knew. The sympathy that once automatically belonged to Sam had shifted. Strangers stopped me in the grocery store. "Good for you," one man said softly as he bagged apples. "Took courage to speak up." Sam, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. Her teary Facebook post, "I just wanted my sister to forgive me," was met with biting comments. "You don't strand family in the desert, sweetheart. Some mistakes you don't get to cry your way out of." I read them late at night, equal parts vindicated and hollow. She was still my sister, but she had chosen her path. One afternoon, as I refilled coffee at table 6, an older woman caught my hand. Her grip was papery but firm. "Lexi, don't let anyone shame you for telling the truth. Some of us stayed quiet for decades. You broke the pattern." Her words rooted in me like a promise. At home, Jackie handed me an envelope that had arrived at the diner. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, unsigned. "Watching you stand up for yourself gave me courage. I told my husband I'm done covering for our son's mistakes. Thank you." I sat at the kitchen table, the note trembling in my hands. My family had tried to silence me, to bury me under loyalty twisted into chains, but now my voice was echoing outward, helping others unshackle themselves. Justice wasn't just the law closing in on the Monroes, it was the community no longer buying their story. It was the scales tipping, slowly but finally, in my direction. For the first time in my life, I felt what it meant to stand in the light without apology. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The letter from the stranger who said my courage gave her strength still sat on my dresser when I packed for Phoenix. I read it one last time, folded it carefully, and slipped it into my bag. It felt less like paper and more like a compass. Jackie drove me down I-17 that Friday, her music blasting, windows down, desert wind tangling our hair. The road unspooled ahead, each mile a thread pulling me farther from the weight of the Monroe house. "You sure about this?" Jackie asked over the roar of the air. I smiled, the first real smile in weeks. "Yeah, I'm done surviving. I want to start living." My new apartment in Phoenix wasn't much. Second floor of a sun-faded complex with a view of a palm tree that leaned like it had stories to tell. But it was mine. The first night, I lay on the mattress on the floor, boxes stacked like sentinels, and whispered into the quiet, "Welcome home, Lexi." The next morning, sunlight cut through gauzy curtains, painting the walls gold. I pinned my first office paycheck to the corkboard above my desk, right beside a course syllabus for the paralegal program Judge Rodriguez had recommended. My life, once a string of sacrifices, was finally taking shape on my own terms. Work at the small legal office was nothing like the diner. The hum of printers replaced clattering plates, case files replaced menus, but I liked it. The rhythm of organization, the feeling that each paper I filed was a brick in the foundation of something solid. One afternoon, my supervisor, Maria, peeked into my cubicle. "You've got an eye for detail. Ever thought about going beyond paralegal training?" I hesitated, then shook my head. I didn't think I could afford the dream. She smiled knowingly. "Keep doing what you're doing. Doors open for people who work like you." Her words lodged deep inside me, not as an empty compliment, but as a possibility. I didn't cut all ties to my past. Officer Hayes called once a week with updates, hearings scheduled, charges filed. Each time his calm tone steadied me. "You don't have to face them alone," he reminded me. The town's whispers had reached Phoenix, too. Martha mailed me a clipping of a newspaper column, "Monroe Family Faces Scrutiny After Daughter's Ordeal." My parents, once pillars of church fundraisers and neighborhood committees, now found doors closing. Invitations dried up. Their world shrank. Meanwhile, mine stretched wide. On Sundays, instead of enduring forced family dinners, I joined Jackie at her parents' place north of the city. Her mom hugged me without expectation, her dad carved turkey without judgment. When they asked questions, they actually listened to my answers. One evening, sitting on their porch while cicadas sang in the distance, Jackie's mom squeezed my hand. "Family isn't about who shares your blood, it's about who shows up." Tears burned behind my eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from finally being seen. In Phoenix, I found new circles too. The community center hosted a support group for women disentangling from toxic families. I shared my story hesitantly at first, then more freely. One woman whispered afterward, "I thought I was alone." I shook my head, feeling strength ripple through me. "You're not." The group decided to call ourselves Family Scapegoats Anonymous, half joking, half serious. But every Thursday night, when we sat in that room, laughter and tears blending, it felt like a covenant stronger than the water of the womb. Months passed. Seasons shifted. One morning, driving my used Honda down a familiar stretch of I-10, I saw the mile marker where Sam had abandoned me. I pulled over, not out of fear, but choice. The desert stretched endless and wide, crimson and gold in the sunrise. Where once it had been a tomb, now it was a canvas. I stood there, boots crunching gravel, and whispered to the horizon, "I made it." The wind carried the words out and away, scattering them like seeds. That night, back at my apartment, I changed my phone number permanently. When the customer service rep asked if I wanted to notify my old contacts, I said simply, "No, thank you." The small click of disconnection felt monumental. I pinned the new number to my corkboard, beside the paycheck and the syllabus. 3 simple things, but together, they told the truth. I was no longer living in reaction to betrayal. I was living in creation of my own future. For the first time, the word that filled me wasn't survival, it was rebirth. The desert had called me back. Months had passed since the night my family's lies cracked open, since Phoenix became the soil where I began again. Yet here I was, steering my used Honda down I-17, my hands steady on the wheel, the horizon stretching forever. I slowed when the familiar mile marker appeared, 231, the same barren stretch where Sam had abandoned me, the same place where the old me had almost disappeared. I pulled over onto the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath my tires. For a moment I sat there, engine idling, the silence pressing in. My pulse thrummed, not with fear this time, but with something steadier, ownership. I stepped out. The air smelled of creosote and dust, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the asphalt. I walked a few steps off the road, boots crunching, until the same sand that had once scraped my knees now shifted beneath me like soft memory. I closed my eyes. That night replayed, the sting of gravel, the hollow ache of thirst, the rattlesnake's warning. My sister's face behind the windshield shrinking in the distance, but instead of collapsing under it, I felt taller, stronger. The desert hadn't killed me. It had remade me. A low rumble broke my thoughts. A pickup slowed as it approached, a man leaning out the window. You all right, miss? Need help? I smiled, shaking my head. I'm good. Just remembering. He gave me a nod, the kind strangers reserve for fellow travelers, and drove on. Dust trailed after him, golden in the light. I laughed softly. The irony wasn't lost on me. Months ago, I had waved desperately for someone, anyone, to stop. Now, I stood here by choice, able to say no. Back at the car, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize, but the voice on the voicemail was familiar. Sam's. Lexi, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I started therapy. I'm trying. Maybe one day you'll want to talk. Her voice cracked. The old me would have rushed to call back, to soothe, to save, but I wasn't her anymore. I pressed delete. Healing was hers to do, not mine to carry. I sat on the hood of my Honda, watching the desert sky bleed into sunset. Crimson bled into orange, orange into violet. The same sky that had once caged me now opened wide like an invitation. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Jackie. Dinner's on me when you're back. Don't stay out too late, warrior. I smiled, thumbs hovering over the screen before typing. On my way soon, just saying goodbye to the ghost of mile 231. As twilight deepened, the desert came alive, the first stars pricking through, coyotes calling far off. I breathed deep, steady, letting the air fill every corner of me. This place, once my graveyard, had become my altar. I turned back toward the car, each step lighter than the last. When I slid behind the wheel, I didn't just drive away from the desert. I drove toward everything waiting, friends who had become family, work that valued me, a life I was finally shaping with my own hands. For the first time, I wasn't running. I was arriving. Looking back on everything, I realized survival wasn't the victory. It was the beginning. The desert stripped me bare, forced me to see the truth I had ignored. That love without respect isn't love at all, and family without boundaries is just control dressed in tradition. I used to think strength meant giving more, bending further, swallowing pain to keep peace, but real strength is saying no. It's standing tall even when your voice shakes. It's choosing yourself without apology. I've learned that freedom doesn't come when others finally value you. It comes when you decide you're already valuable, with or without their approval. And sometimes, walking away isn't betrayal, it's survival. It's rebirth. So if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or small in the shadow of someone else's needs, I want you to remember this. You are not disposable. Your worth isn't up for negotiation. You can redefine what family means. Thank you for walking this road with me. If this story resonated, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget, drop a comment. Tell me, what does family mean to you?